News 12 Sports with Pat Murphy.
Great news regarding Bills tight end Kevin Everett. He moved his arms and legs today. And doctors now believe that's the wrong video, by the way. That is not the right video.
I'm going to tell y'all right now, all of these wonderful people would not be here without Patreon supporters like you. If you enjoy credible news, reviews, and commentary on UFOs and UAPs 5 days a week, you want to support this show. What's your name? Marty. Marty, look how easy this is, Marty. Pick up your phone. Boom, you're a Patreon member. I mean, look, it's so easy. You just click the link, which is right here. Just for $1 a month, you can support this show. Just fill out the information and pledge what's comfortable for you. It could be $1, $5, $10, or who knows. Just support. Hello, good morning, good evening, good day, good afternoon, and aloha. Welcome back, wherever you are around the world, to another episode, live episode of the Unidentified Celebrity Review, your home for credible news, reviews, and commentary on everything UAP and UFO. My name's Luis Jimenez. Before we bring on our co-host, got to pay some bills really quickly. I want to say thank you to DOS Tapes. They provide all the tunes you hear on the show. If you like the music around here, go check out their music. It's free. There's a link in the description. Check it out. Also, want to say thank you to all of the folks out there in the chat, including the members of the channel. Thank you, members. Shout out to you guys. Shout out to the Patreon members. If you're not a member of Patreon, please check it out. For as little as $1 a month, you can help us support this channel. We are a public access channel. We're supported by viewers like you. So if you'd like to see this kind of content, please consider supporting. If you can't, don't worry about it, baby. We got your back. No paywalls here. Everything's free. You can peruse at your leisure, download on the podcast, Apple, iTunes. Just leave us a review. Leave us a like if you can. If you do dig the show, subscribe, maybe even consider clicking that big red button. That would be wonderful as well. Let's see here. What else? We've got links not only for our co-hosts, but our guests, our Discord. So if you guys want to hang out with us in Discord, it's a really fun place for free thought and sometimes disagreements and sometimes agreements. Either way, nobody's rude. Nobody's cursing at each other. We've got rules. Every once in a while, those rules get pushed to the limit. But we're going to keep it around because it's fun. And it's free. Again, our Discord is also free. So without further ado, let us bring on our co-hosts from the long, wonderful weekend. Mr. Rather Be Squidding, Miss UFO Jane Kyle. How are you guys doing? How was the weekend?
Doing well.
Yeah?
It was a weekend.
It was a weekend, you said?
It was a full 48 hours this year, which I appreciate.
It was a weekend. I fell asleep on the hammock at one point. So, I mean, it was just, it was a weekend.
One of those weekends. Yeah. Well, speaking of hammocks, our guest today is as chill as you could possibly get. Very cool guy. But yeah, let's just get right to him, shall we, guys? So we've had Ted Roe on the show before. He is the founder of NARCAP, which, if you guys don't know what that is, essentially it's a database for just pilots to submit their UFO reports anonymously or with all of their information. Either way, it's the only place, it's the only website. He's been doing it for over 20 years, I believe. I'll get the exact number as soon as he gets in here. But he's a wonderful voice in this community. And recently he's now been contributing to the AIAA conference, which is the American Institute of Aeronautics and Astronautics. And they've got a conference this year. And last year was the first time in the history of this conference that they talked about UAPs and UFOs. They're doing it again this year. And Ted's here to tell us about it because he's super excited. And when Ted Roe is excited, you guys should get excited because I think he's bringing a real cool perspective on this UAP discussion. And then in hour 2, we're going to say goodbye to Ted. We're going to bring in Daniel Miller. And we're going to break down the Lua Lozano interview and sort of our time to reflect for the last 48 hours. We haven't gotten Jane's opinion on it yet. And there was a lot of conversation.
Thinking about it on the hammock.
Ooh, I bet you were. Put you right to sleep. So we're going to discuss it. We're going to discuss it. The reactions to it and And yeah, anyway, so let's bring in our friend of the show, Mr. Ted Roe. Ted, how you doing?
I'm doing just great. Can you see me?
Oh, we can see you. We can hear you. You're coming in great, loud
Okay.
and clear. And if you guys, well, I was gonna say, if during this interview you hear nature sounds like crickets or frogs, if you're listening on the radio, or if you only listen to the show through podcasts, Ted is in Hawaii, and he is outside among nature. Got a couple pop buttons on his white long sleeve shirt. He's looking relaxed. He's looking rested. He's looking like a man ready to go to an information war. How are you, sir?
Well, I'm doing just great. Like you say, I'm in Hawaii, so I woke up in paradise, and that's the heart's still beating, so that's pretty good.
Yeah, any day above ground's a good one, right?
Yeah. I wanted to offer a couple of points in your introduction. I'm not the founder of NARCAP. I co-founded NARCAP with Dr. Richard Haynes, and that's okay. It's kind of
I always think of you just because you're the one I speak to all the time. We gotta get that. Right. Do you think we could ever talk to Richard Haynes and you at the same time?
I don't know. I haven't been able to talk to him for probably 5 years. He retired in 2015, and it's been pretty much out of reach since then. And he's getting on in years. So
yeah, no, that makes sense. Well, I guess let's start with the conference, Ted. I mean, like, what are you excited about this year?
Well, I'll just start with the ODNI report last summer. Okay, they acknowledged that UAP were real, and then they cited three primary concerns. The first being national security, the second being aviation safety, and the third being the stigma that was inhibiting research in the topic in the mainstream. So it was kind of starving them for information. About a week and a half later, I got a call from a rep of the American Institute of Aeronautics and Astronautics asking if I would participate in a series of presentations at their AV21 conference, advocating for the scientific study of unidentified aerial phenomena. So myself and 5 others presented different data from different angles, ended up saying the same thing, which was a credit, I think, to everybody. And about a month later, AIAA invited us back and asked us if we would set up a UAP aviation safety research program inside the AIAA. And we've been working on that program for the last 6 months. We're going to be rolling it out at the AV22 conference in June. And so we're just getting rolling on it right now. Our digital presence is just starting to ramp up. They'll have a web page for us on AIAA shortly. We do have a Twitter page that they've sanctioned at AIAA_UAP. And in this process, we're going to be taking on the global issue of aviation safety and unidentified aerial phenomena. We intend to work with the official UAP research teams around the world, as well as the official science and engineering teams that are aviation safety planners in every country that will listen to us.
So it seems like national security and flight safety awareness are the two big things. So with that said, what is this phenomena a majority of that we're talking about here? Is this a mix of things? Is this drones? And the reason why they want to destigmatize, which was the third thing on the list, to destigmatize the conversation, because these drones look weird and nobody wants to report something that looks weird in the sky because the stigma's immediately, oh, this guy's seeing aliens. Is, I guess, what's the ratio to flight safety hazards and stigma that carries with drones versus the diamond in the rough versus the UAP that we all obviously want to get to the core truth of?
Well, AIAA has its own programs to address drones, and they know all about them, and they're going to become more commonplace, and we need to have a conversation about how we administrate drone traffic and this kind of stuff. And that AIAA is working on all of that, and they know what drones are. We're not here for drones. Right. Excuse me. The focus is on what we commonly recognize UAP as, and I presented our NARCAP findings at the last conference, going over it, why they're unique, why they're different. Dr. Knuth ended up doing a presentation as well, examining flight dynamics, and we were in agreement with each other. And then Dr. Kaparapu stepped up and started talking about RF frequency emissions and this sort of thing. And again, we were talking about the same things from different angles. We're pretty sure we're not talking about drones, and given the way the ODNI report is written, they're pretty sure they're not talking about drones either. They haven't completely ruled it out that it might be new tech from an adversary, but given the history of it, I have 100 years of these cases that are similar, same kind of thing: ball of light, a sphere, cylinder, disc, and this has been going on. I've got 100 years of pilot reports of this, so the idea that it's a drone really doesn't wash, and I think the defense establishment understands this, and that's why we see the threat posture in the ODNI report, even in the unclassified version.
But there are drones out there, right? And I'd assume drones would be a flight hazard as well. So do you get a sense of how much people are seeing drones versus these actually anomalous UFOs?
Well, there's no real way of telling there. You'd need a pretty comprehensive data collection program to really look into that and see. My little program with NARCAP, we did it for 22 years so far, and we've developed data, but we haven't had the kind of access to information that, say, the French team has at GPAN CNES. So we really don't know what this is about, and that's part of elevating this conversation. This is part of the information we're going to want to get to. There are some things that pretty well disqualify drones in an observation, duration, sounds, this kind of thing, and then movements. If the movements are consistent with what we understand about unidentified aerial phenomena, we don't have tech that moves that way. We just don't, and it hasn't appeared even in the literatures yet. It's outside of our current capacity. The discussion might be around high physics, general relativity, this kind of thing, but we don't have much that operates on those principles. Of that, I'm pretty confident.
Could you talk about a highlighted case? I know there was a case that I saw on the, I'm going to say it wrong. NARCAP. Not say. I see the acronym in my head, but I can't pronounce it correctly. But I saw on the blog you had a March 20th case. I think it was over Mexico. I don't know if that one comes to mind or one like it, but I was pretty captivated by that. Do you think you could talk about that a little bit to demonstrate kind of, I guess, what you're getting at here about probably not a drone?
Well, in this case, the observation involved a freight carrier heading from Quarantaro Airport northbound to Memphis, and they'd been in the air an hour or two. It was later in the evening, and they were over Monterey, and a ball of light dropped into view vertically, and to their altitude, and then proceeded to send a beam down the side of the plane, and then started pacing the aircraft. The crew immediately thought they were dealing with landing lights on an opposing aircraft, and began to prepare to do evasion inputs to avoid hitting this, whatever it was. And then it just paced the aircraft, and it stayed with them for about 35 minutes, and then it banked away before they reached the U.S. border. The aircraft was doing 500 miles an hour, so the UAP was doing 500 miles an hour. It was glowing. The aircraft wasn't, but there's information there that we can get from it. In the original discussion, the pilot had said that he had thought it was within 1,000 to 2,000 feet of the aircraft, and that's probably about right. But you can't tell from the video. The video isn't particularly good, but the audio kind of shows you the consternation of the air crew, and sort of underscores. I wrote up an advisory for pilots and posted it on the NARCAP site, and this incident really underscores those kinds of situations that we're concerned about. Yeah.
Well, yeah. What is your advice to pilots who might be experiencing something like that? To make sure that they don't have a flight mishap or something. Should they just look at it and pretend it doesn't exist and go about their normal business, or how do they respond?
It's tricky, but the first thing you want to do is arm them with knowledge so they know it can happen, and that they understand that these things are unpredictable. You can't really know what they're going to do next. So if you find yourself being accosted by one versus seeing one at a distance or something, it's probably a good idea to get some separation, move away from it. It's unexpected, it's unpredictable, and they're highly mobile, or can be. And the literature is filled with examples of this sort of thing. And they'll close. You'll get collision headings. You'll get loss of separation under 1,000 feet. You'll get sometimes quite close. I've heard stories of them posting up between the wing and the tail section on an aircraft.
Wow.
So yeah, there's a lot of stories along head-on passes with very low tolerance, very close range, this kind of thing. So, like I said, they're unexpected, they're unpredictable. The crews have no training, so the smart thing to do is get away from it. Put it behind you. That's the most conservative, and that puts you and your passengers in the best position to deal with it. It's not time to try and make alien contact or something while you're up there.
Yeah.
You've got
also
150 souls on board. Yeah, go ahead.
What I was going to ask also, if you have that, if you're a commercial pilot like that, and you have to ask permission to change direction? So that's also just another little data point to collect, right?
Well, if you have to report that you made a control input that took you off course, that's all good. The main thing is telling them why. And that's been the big problem for all of these years. The FAA refused to accept pilot reports for decades. And if you can imagine the UAP task force coming into the FAA offices and saying, show us all your neat UFO stuff. And the FAA has to say, well, we didn't take any of the reports for 30 years, so we don't really have any UFO data per se. What was that like?
Ted, I gotta tell you, a lot of people in the audience. This is like the second or third time I've seen it. This message. Ted's got a sexy voice. Should narrate some books, my friend.
Well,
good at it.
That sounds like an idea. Audiobooks or something. But thank you.
So, the reason why I mentioned drones for sort of the first couple questions is because I want to make it clear that at this conference, this very reputable aeronautics conference, and how long has this conference been going on again?
It happens every summer and it's been going on for years and years, decades.
Yeah, a long time. I want to say at least 30 years.
Right. Yeah.
And they, again, like, to add to the seriousness of this, like Ted said, drones, that's a whole nother presentation. That's a whole nother thing. We're very aware of that. This is not what we're talking about. We're not talking about the drone aspect of this. We're talking about the diamond in the rough, the other bucket, as the ODNI report so eloquently put it. So what are you specifically contributing this year to the conference, or what presentation are you most looking forward to? Or can you tell us a little bit about it to get people excited and maybe even want to attend? Is it virtual this year? Can you actually go physically?
It's virtual, so you can watch it on your computer. We'll be doing it via Zoom. Just an aside on the drone part of it, there were 41 sessions in one day of that conference, and we were one session of 4 or 6 speakers in 4 hours. So and the conference is 2 weeks long. So yes, there'll be UAV discussions, and they'll be in their UAV box. As far as my presentation goes, I'm going to be presenting on the program itself as we designed it, and the organization as I structured it, and talking a little bit about what we're going to do and how we're going to go about doing it. And then we have some guest speakers that we're lining up, and some of those might, if they come through, it's going to be historic. We're just waiting. I've got a couple of folks that have said yes, but we're not ready to talk about that yet. When we get our speaker list established, AIAA will give us a page and promote our speakers and our process, and I'll make sure you get a copy of that.
Wonderful.
When is the conference?
It'll be end of June, first week of July. So I don't have the exact dates yet, so I'm still waiting on all that.
Is it it's not the aviation forum, because that's from the 27th of June to July 1st in Chicago, Illinois, and online. Or is that it?
It may actually, I think that's it. I think that's going to be it. It'll be the AV22 forum session.
So you'll be able to go there if you want to, it sounds like, as well.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you can attend, but we're all going to be virtual, so I could think of other things to spend my plane ticket money on, but yeah, right. You could go. I mean, if you're in the Chicago area and you wanted to be there, you can. Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, here we've got the site up right here, so if you guys want to go check it out, you can register right at aiaa.org/aviation, and it'll take you right to the page. I mean, they've got, you can plan your trip, you can attend online. So there's a lot of ways to register. If you're into also just aeronautics and flying, this is probably something, or operate drones, this is probably something you're going to attend. And if you got some time and you want to learn a little bit about anomalous UAP, I think there's going to be a very cool presentation at this. So I guess what's going to be the biggest difference for you, Ted, in this year's presentation versus last year's?
Well, this year we're recruiting. We're going to be presenting more reasons why we should be looking at UAP, and then we're going to be looking for PhD and engineer members to come and do that. That's a helicopter, by the way. Hopefully that's not too obnoxious.
It's not too bad. Yeah, I wasn't kidding you guys when I say this man is out in the middle of Hawaii. He's sitting on a lava slab right now, right?
Matter of fact, yeah. But so we're recruiting for our program, so we can staff it and start fulfilling the functions of the sub organization that we've created within AIAA to deal with UAP matters. And hopefully we're going to mainstream and normalize it, and it'll just be another presentation at the AV23 conference. We go ahead. Go ahead, Luke.
What's the focus of the investigations that you're going to try to be doing? Are you trying to figure out what they are, or is it more towards, specifically flight safety?
Well, you kind of need one for the other. And so we're going to have a broad range of inquiry. We'll be calling for papers across the aviation sciences community and looking for ideas and trying to work policy so that we can get access to data. There's a number of functions that we need to engage in order to move this thing. But and then our primary goal is to develop strategies and modalities for mitigating aviation safety related UAP factors. How's that for engineering speak? But that's what we're going to do, and what that could entail is detection devices, surveillance from ground, air, and space. We have satellite surveillance people on staff. So we're looking in through multiple sensing modalities to try and see if we can mitigate safety factors, something to mount on the airplane that can detect them, or some way for the facilities to pick them up when they're in critical airspace, this kind of thing.
Did you have anything else on that, Rather?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great goal, and could be very interesting, right?
It's I've been waiting forever to be able to do this, and now I have access to almost an unlimited brain trust of aviation and aeronautical scientists and engineers. It's like got NASA people right on our group already.
Wow.
I know there was we've spoken before I mean, you've had personal experiences that range from cool to really, really scary, and just in a lot of ways disturbing. I know that it's were they how, I guess, hesitant was the AIAA? Did you have to convince them, like, hey, or is this is something they came to you with, right? Like, they were like, Ted, we want you to come to this conference. They didn't really care about,
Right.
the stigma that comes with some of the stories you've told in the past. They're really truly are making an effort to make it about the data. And so when you go to these conferences or you give these discussions, how do you separate that personal attachment to it versus what the AIAA is asking for?
Well, let me take the long way around on that. When I started with NARCAP and Dr. Haynes, I couldn't talk about any of it, none of it at all, and I didn't for quite some time. And it wasn't until the environment changed with Lou and those guys a few years ago, things started to flip around enough to where I thought maybe I could. I wasn't sure if science was ever going to pick up the ball, but I thought, my experiences include data that science would be interested in. So I started to try and share at least some of the nuts and bolts aspects of the things I've seen. Of course, I've worked with people who have direct exposures, and nobody argues with them about it. Professor Erling Strand from Hessel and Dr. Teodomani from Italy, both of whom have been quite close and who've been documenting these things for a long time. So I still had to check the room, and I still do. When I share about my experiences, I did it at the conference this last year. I did it in the context of talking about our findings at NARCAP, and specifically we were talking about ball of light phenomena, and I suspected that the colors associated with ball of light phenomena may be related to the emission spectra of ionizing atmospheric atoms, right? Which means that the UAP is emitting something that's exciting the atoms, right, and busting off and ionizing them. So you see these glows, and depending on which atmospheric constituent, you get a different color. And then I said, for example, I saw something come out of the water that was an orange ball with a disc inside of it, and my guess is that it was emitting in the helium band. And that's all I could say. Okay, I've got exposures that are harrowing and psychologically difficult to process. But doing this work helps quite a bit in that regard. And I don't think the aviation science community is ready for that. And at the same time, I've written into like our recruiting process to look out for everybody's mental health, because once people start chewing on this and they start understanding sort of what's down the rabbit hole, people need support, to move forward. And while I can anticipate that, I'm never ever going to put it in writing or explain it ahead of time. I'm just going to look out for my people, and like I needed to be looked out for after my exposures. And just play it down like that, because the truth and the facts are going to will out anyway, and they don't care what I saw. They don't care about my story. And I don't. My story isn't going to make or break the world, whether it knows it or not, because there's so many of them. In the end, we'll figure out whether it's mental illness or not. I'm banking it's not, and in that case, we've got real issues. And you can tell by the way the ODNI report was written that they felt the same way. So in that spirit, I just walk carefully, and I don't deny it. I've seen them. Researchers should know that you can see them. There are places to go and look at them, and if you stake them out long enough, you can get data. And that's what's important. That we're not just following up on people's anecdotes. We see them ourselves. So, that was kind of my message with AIAA last summer, and I'm going to continue with that. But I'm going to do it, like I said, check the room, be careful.
Yeah. No, I think that's amazing advice. And I'm really happy to hear that there's like a mental health checkup aspect to it as well, because I think that's important. If you have especially an experience on your level, like that's let me ask you this. Who have you spoken to as far as, dealing with that trauma? How have you handled it, or seek that mental health help? Like, what's your advice for people who have had those psychologically damaging experiences?
Okay, well, my advice for others, and this isn't what happened to me, but my advice for others is keep it out of ufology. Go see a doctor, get some help with post-traumatic stress disorder and anything else that might be constellating around it, because a lot of us are carrying other types of mental issues. And make sure that you're dealing with somebody who's legally accountable for what they say and do. Stay away from the hypnotherapists and this sort of thing, and the counselor types, and focus on people who are actually accountable for their actions with you, and pay for it and get the help you need. These types of things for some people can be really disturbing. And if you've got underlying disorders, it can make it worse. So that's my advice. Look out for your mind and work with people that actually care about what they're doing, and that aren't trying to learn your story so that they can find some content or whatever it is that moves them through this field. Now, as far as what I did, I suffered a lot for a lot of years, and I had complex post-traumatic stress disorder from a pretty rough childhood. I never was safe, and I think some of you in your audience can probably relate to that. Oh, yeah. And then to add on it these experiences on top of that, where you're truly not safe. People know I'm a martial artist. Well, I've been one since I was 6, and it was all because the world frightened me, and nobody was looking out for me. And I spent years and decades training and practicing, and that brought me to the foot of the Buddha and his teachings about awareness and mindfulness and the cessation of suffering and fear. And so I studied the Satipatthana, the Kalama, and the Karanaya Metta Suttas for about 10 years, meditative training, train awareness, train insight. Worked very hard with that, and eventually got to a place where I could understand my predicament and then work my way out of it. But that's a very long road, and not everybody's suited to that. A doctor can get you there probably just as quick, a good psychologist. And for me, it started with a psychologist friend who had taken an interest in me, and she started down the road and sort of defined what my issues were. And then she declared she was in love with me, and that just broke everything. And all of my trust it was just awful. But then I just picked up the ball myself and went and fixed my mind best I could.
Like a long journey. I'm glad that you've taken it and are where you are now, because boy, that sounds like a harrowing way to get there. But appreciate what you're doing.
Well, the experiences were harrowing too, and I've got a lot more observations than just little lights in the sky. And when the system's ready to talk about that, I'll probably bring them up. But right now, it's a matter of getting people to look, getting people to understand there's something to be looked at, letting those first layers of foundational data get laid down so that people sort of have an idea of, okay, they have attributes like this and they're sort of like that. And now we can start grasping our mind around it. My biggest problem is that I'm dealing with engineers who have a certain kind of, if you've ever lived around them, you know what I'm talking about. They have this way of looking at reality, and same with scientists. Scientists have a very detailed, focused, narrow pie slice view of things, and engineers are just very much into what they do. And so they're like, wow, can you believe that? It went from 27,000 feet to 50 feet and did it in 0.78 seconds, and it didn't explode. Oh my God, how did they do that? And it didn't ionize on the way down. How is that possible? And they're sitting there thinking that, and I'm in the back of my head thinking, why are they doing it? I'm not an engineer. I'm not a scientist. So my frustration with all of this is, I'm sure I'm going to be tested much more over the years before we finally arrive at a place where we're all able to discuss what we know with a straight face and use it to further the information, to synergize it into new information.
I've got one thing I'd love for you to watch, because I don't think you've watched it yet, but you are familiar with Gary Nolan, right?
Yes.
Are you familiar with the MIT AI engineer Lex Fridman? He also does a podcast. So Lex
Well, I've
Fridman
heard
had
of him.
Lex Fridman had a podcast with Gary Nolan, and in that, it is hands down, I think, the best conversation I've heard on the topic, maybe ever. It is really, really good. It sticks out like a sore thumb for me. But one part of the conversation, Dr. Gary Nolan was discussing how this conversation, when he does speaking tours at different universities and they get together at these dinners, the conversation of UAP at some point always comes up. Always, every time. And one of two things will happen. Either A, somebody will tell their personal story after Gary gives his thoughts on it. And again, these are all PhDs. These are all, the if we want to call them the cream of society. One person tells their story, and then all of a sudden, somebody else at the other side of the table was like, "Oh, well, I also blah 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 blah," and then it seems to kind of like turn into this wave. Or the other thing that happens is that after the dinner, somebody will come up to him and say, "Hey, here's my personal story. I've never told this to anybody because I'm just so afraid of being ridiculed. But after you spoke, it gave me confidence to just come and tell you." And the thing that he said was that there was a safety in numbers. And and I think, do you believe that these conferences, these again, places of intellectual safe spaces, where they can come, and there's a safety in numbers now when it starts to this topic of UAP? Because last year we had Ryan Graves, if I'm not mistaken, we had Kevin Knuth, we had Dr. Matthew Shigatis, who was on our program a month ago. So these are real PhDs. These are real men of science, instead of real men of genius. That still works. If I'm stealing the Bud Light commercial. But I mean, do you feel like this conversation is happening in those corners of society on a much more frequent level? And where do you think that is going to lead us to here in the next, I'd say, 3 to 5 years?
Well, I do think those conversations are helpful, and the idea of being able to sanction the subject for conversation is helpful, because that's been a problem all along, and that's what the ODNI report was citing, was that the stigma was inhibiting even conversations, that were going to help us understand what these things are about. The changes are happening sooner than that. This AIAA program, we had our executive sponsors, who are upper level officers in AIAA, that helped sort of shepherd us into existence. And the NASA director Bill Nelson has come out very interested in UAP. Dr. Ravi Kaparapu is one of my colleagues, and he's a planetary scientist and an astrophysicist, and has spoke at SETI talk, did a SETI talk last November. Links on my Twitter page. So yes, and this is something I've been wanting to see more of, and hopefully fostering whenever I get the chance, is that we need a multidisciplinary approach to this, and that as we start, like I said, as we start getting layers of foundational information down, that's actually pretty strong, and the conversation is mature, and that we have real scientists and engineers weighing in on it with papers. We're going to be having calls for papers and pulling them in, and hopefully we're going to get a peer-reviewed journal going out of all this that adheres to standards of research and publication. All of that is going to elevate the conversation. I'd love to see psychology start to focus on this, and social sciences needs to weigh in on it. There are issues that arise in all of those topics, as well as the nuts and bolts of understanding what UAP are and trying not to run into one. And beyond that, there are other considerations, and that's why the Pentagon has been reticent to want to share. So hopefully we'll take a position with policy to be able to kind of champion the civilian side for transparency. As much as it makes sense to do that. But I'm already hearing about companies that are being founded specifically to deal with UAP studies and research and work with findings. We've got our program going. I'm aware of other companies that are like doing satellite surveillance of the planet for overmining and for different reasons, and they're talking about retooling their systems so that they can do detections as well, based on data that we can end up pulling together from multi-sensor captures. So all of these things are sort of in the offing, and they're happening right now. And you're going to see sort of a split between the ufology proper and the actual data being developed, and that's going to occur inside their fields, be published in their journals. They're not going to be coming to talk to ufology about it. It's going to be moving science in that direction.
Yeah, we keep hearing this. We keep hearing that there's a split coming between ufology and the science or government even aspect of this. And it's interesting how it's being framed, but that's interesting to hear you say it like that, because I know that you're pretty far removed from things that are going on in the old Twitter universe or social media landscape.
I pretty much walked away from most of it because I'm very interested in the actual answers to real questions about real incidents. And if you compare a scientific conference or symposium, a real one, with a UFO conference, they're not the same thing.
Well, I've never just the registration. I mean, for the full conference rate for an early member, it's $930. For a member, it's $1,280. And if you're a non-member, it's $1,430 to attend this conference. It's not cheap. They're not messing around. And it's $600 if you're attending it virtually for a non-member. So most people, I think, would be non-members. I mean, they do have rates for undergraduates or graduate students that are a lot better. Or if you're a retired member, then you get in real cheap. But yeah, like, I don't, they're not messing around. This is not a conference that's, $250 for 3 days worth of discussions. This is legitimate.
These are credentialed.
Yeah,
credentialed people that represent companies, Lockheed Martin and others that are kind of insisting that they belong to these professional societies. But on the flip side, I published. They gave me permission to publish the presentations from last summer. They're on the NARCAP YouTube channel, and so you can see what we said and who was there, and then and hopefully they're going to let us do that again this year. So once it's done, I'll probably get the copies and make it available to ufology. So if you don't attend, it doesn't mean you're not going to get a chance to know what it was about. If I have anything to say about it.
Oh, sorry, Ted. Didn't mean to cut you off.
No, that's okay. I just was going to say that that these are professional societies. Okay, we're moving up the food chain now. We're coming out of the street level discussion of ufology, and we're starting to get specific, and we're starting to bring specific perspectives and specific science to it, and it's heading into rarefied environments. And that's kind of my point as far as the split goes in ufology. It isn't like hey, screw you guys, we're going this way. It's just a natural progression of using the philosophy of science versus ufology in general, which isn't that disciplined or focused.
So kind of related to this, I think I'm going to know your answer based on what I read, but do you have a preference between the term UAP and UFO? And is UAP in some ways a more specific definition? Is it more helpful? Is it just a, shifting the stigma thing? What's your take on all that?
Well, originally, it was just an adjective phrase, right? Unidentified aerial phenomena, all lowercase, right? And then Dr. Haynes, when he was working with Professor Hynek and Mark Rodiger at QFOS, came up with a definition for it, made it a proper noun, capital unidentified aerial phenomena, with a full definition to it. And when we started NARCAP in 1999, UFO was the term being used, and that wasn't accurate because not all of these things are easily identifiable as objects. How do you know if a ball of light is an object emitting the light, or is it a quantum system of some kind, light system? And so we wanted to be accurate that way, and then we wanted to differentiate ourselves from ufology because of that. We had done a sort of a market survey of the personalities and organizations involved, and decided we didn't want anything to do with it. For 8 years, we didn't associate with them at all. But we managed to end up briefing congressmen and seeing our term go viral. And it served its purpose up to this point. I think now it's kind of lost its objectivity that we intended for it. And it was interesting that, like, when DeLong and those guys decided to take it on, they didn't bother to even find out what the definition was first. And so there's a lot of that going on. A lot of people using the term and don't even know what it means or what its history is. And I suppose that's to be expected too. But unidentified aerial phenomena is palatable to the science community right now. It gives it the proper sense of unknown, and you can defeat implicit bias and use earnest curiosity and investigate. And that's the whole point, is to get them over that hump. If you say UFO, everybody knows what you're after, and people are projecting on that. And as a scientist, that doesn't help you at all. So that's kind of the story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the history goes back further, I think, than a lot of people realize.
Mm-hmm.
So
well, it came right. It goes right back to us. You can go back to, say, 2000 and see where we started rolling that out. I mean, Dr. Haynes' first paper, he put it out in the definition thereof, and we published that in 2000. And like, there's articles by various bloggers and stuff out there commenting on how we'd introduced this term and how we were going that way. And there were some liked it, some didn't. Some like it now and some don't. I don't care. So we just did what we needed to do.
I just want to remind real quick, because I know Josh, because this has been it's just so funny that you're mentioning this, because this is exactly what everyone's arguing about over Twitter this last weekend. And I guess that the question is, because Jazz is working on a news article right now, linking the NRA or the NARA documents from 1947, where they used the term unidentified aerial phenomena. The government was well into them. Check with me for the links. And this idea that, because there's been sort of a call to action to destroy ufology, and everybody's like, whoa, wait a second, what the hell does that mean? And because there's a segment of ufology that does bang up wonderful research, that is doing some really good stuff. And then there's another segment of it that is the complete opposite of it. That is not good for the discussion. At least if you want to progress this discussion scientifically, that is. It just depends on what your needs are.
Right.
But let's just say we want this discussion to go mainstream. We want everybody in every household talking about this around the dinner table, at the water cooler, wondering what's going to happen next with whatever law or whatever witness comes forward in public hearings, or whatever the thing that is going to raise the consciousness of this topic to that level. But I guess my question is there a middle road here where these great researchers can also be part of this other part of the discussion, and that research just doesn't get thrown out? Or is that, in your opinion, and just keep this in mind, folks, before he answers, like, Ted Roe has gone through abduction experiences, multiple ones, okay? If anybody is a believer of this topic, it is Ted Roe. But he is now in a position where he's going to these very professional conferences and presenting with the top minds in aeronautics and the top contractors, Boeing, Lockheed Martin, and he's making presentations as to why people should be paying attention to this. So before, just keep that in mind as he answers. Is there a middle road here? Can we have the segments of ufology that are solid, and also this scientific discussion? Can they coexist, or can they not, in your opinion?
Well, some philosophies are compatible and some aren't. For example, I'm not a priest. I'm not here to talk about spiritual things. And science doesn't either. It deals with evidence. It's objective awareness and logic that personified. That's the role of science. So if you want to talk about, some would say, well, you can't separate one from the other, but you have to. If the priests want to talk about this and the folks want to discuss this in their part of it, that's fine. But they're not going to hold the attention of those who've put in decades for their degrees and their focus on science and math, particularly when there is science and math around the subject. You don't have to go into belief systems. That doesn't mean you won't arrive at one at some point, but science is very clear in what it's trying to do. And in my own case, I've got exposure, sure, to these phenomena. I've got some opinions about it, and I keep them out of it. I'm an administrator, and in the role with AIAA, I'm an administrator. I'm not a scientist. I'm not pushing any particular finding or agenda. I'm trying to maintain neutrality and objectivity so that whatever the actual data is, it percolates up, and we can understand whether there's an external phenomena or an internal one or both. We could end up understanding some of these other aspects eventually, but not everybody can be right, and not every opinion is equal. And the bottom line with that is that we have to just do the work and get there. I don't think that people who are supporting a spiritual conversation around this have the kind of evidence they need in order to stand in front of a group of scientists and engineers with a straight face, make a presentation that would be credible and listened to. And that doesn't mean that doesn't disqualify their perspective or their opinion, but you got to again check the room. Who are you talking to? Like I said, the scientists are very that I'm around are very interested in how they do it, but they don't really the idea of why they do it. I was talking to Dr. Koparapu, and he says, I said, so just bear with me for a second, Robbie. If these guys are master nanotechnologists and they're master biomolecular engineers, what do you suppose their capacity for surveillance is? And it was like I hit him with a 2x4. It was just, oh, okay. Now this is a very, very, very bright guy in his field. Okay, right. But I'm an administrator. I'm a tactical thinker. Okay, my mind is in a different way than his, and that's what we're dealing with. We're dealing with different kinds of mindsets. Everybody's got a voice, but they won't be able to talk about it in the same places. Right. And that's what I mean by the split. Right? Science, hard sciences are going to go one way. Softer social sciences will go another. Religion will go through an adaptation of its own. Already right. Has been. And it's just kind of the way things are. There's nothing for people to be offended or defensive about. It just has to do with the way philosophies connect or repel.
That's a beautiful way to put it. I think that's the best answer that I've heard to that so far, is that some philosophies just don't work well together, and that's okay. That's okay. Because guess what? There's still going to be room for both discussions to happen. It just depends on, again, reading the room. I love that. Reading the room. And I agree with you there. I think it would be very hard pressed to prove some of these things in front of a murder board of scientists. It'd be very, very difficult. So, and like you said, there's already enough math and things to measure there. You don't have to go to cattle mutilations or abductions or any of that stuff to really start getting to the nitty gritty of what's happening. Just as long as there's enough curious minds to allow for that thought process to even get in there. But I mean, did he have like an answer for you to that question? Did he actually come back with, well, you know what? I think that would be actually a very dangerous capability of a species that was able to perfect those two dynamics.
My point was well taken. Okay, he understood immediately what I was talking about, and then I said, do you really think that our conversations go unnoticed if there's another team with their access to internet and everything else? Right. And again, trying to get him to think full circle around this stuff. Okay, he's a scientist. He's a planetary scientist. He's an astrophysicist. He's interested in gravity waves, and he's interested in plasma physics and this kind of thing. But you've got to think bigger than what you're interested if you want to really get a handle on what this is about. And in that process, there's some adaptation involved. And as I told Robbie, I know you're excited about this, and this is historic, but I consider it an albatross around my neck. This is a curse, and we have to carry this knowledge, and we have to carry it carefully in a world that isn't as discriminating as it needs to be for this subject. And we need to do the right thing. The weight is on us, and just trying to sober them up a little bit and get over the ego strokes of being invited to do this work. I mean, I was absolutely stunned when they called me. I couldn't believe it. When I was 11, I was in the library looking up anything I could find on UFOs because myself and my family were having problems. And I get in the card catalog and the Dewey Decimal file there, and I look up UFOs and A's in the front, right? In the front of A is AIAA, Statement on UFOs, in their journal, Aeronautics and Astronautics. I go read that, 11 years old. And now I'm 50 years later, I'm part of the next level with that program. It's and people can talk about synchronicities. I got room for all of that. There are things going on here that are bigger than nuts and bolts, but getting there starts with acknowledging it and laying the foundational data. So we do that.
I'm really lucky to have spoken to you before that synchronicity hit your life, and then post that invitation. And God, man, just the difference. I haven't seen you walk, but I feel like you have an extra pep in your step, it oozes off of you. And I'm so happy that here we are in year 2 and you still got this same excitement that I had for the first time I talked to you. And I remember you were like, Guy, I've been doing this for 50 years. Don't come in here and tell me that this is getting any closer to a resolve or being taken seriously by anybody who should be taking it seriously. And sort of where you're at today, man. It's just, I wish I had recorded that phone conversation. It would have been totally illegal, but man, it would have been cool.
It changed. The situation changed. There was a sea change. And where I was at that time, that was probably an accurate analysis, but something happened. And it was the ODNI report, the UAP task force, the ODNI report. Otherwise, we could have drifted in that same headspace, would be there now. And AIAA and everybody else wouldn't be anywhere near it. So that sea change came, and that's what it was needed. And I've been a cynic in this area for a while. And as somebody who's exposed to it, that's kind of a hard place to be. But now, it looks like there's movement, there's traction, there's more to come. I'm going to be probably phasing down my public presence a bit, as far as social media and stuff, so I can do this work. But I'll be furthering any messaging that we've got from our program, and it should take off after the first part of July. We should start putting it in motion,
because we're going to get public hearings. We're going to get public hearings. I think there's a 50-50 shot we get it this year too, if not definitely next year.
I'd love to do it and present my findings from NARCAP for 22 years of collecting commercial pilot data.
Well, that's why sorry, I know that you got to go, but I was curious, like, how have like these 2 new UFO offices, I assume if they asked for any data or consulting, like you would say yes, or like how has government approached you for this data? Because I think I would be incredibly curious if, especially now, we know all the curiosity behind the scenes. Like, have you ever been approached? Would you say yes to helping the offices?
Not directly at all. Government, this aviation safety program we're doing at AIAA is not derivative of NARCAP. It came from data and issues raised by the ODNI report. However, here I am with 22 years of doing the same thing on the civilian side. So that helped there. A lot of our studies, as you can see on the website, are there. So I know they've been in my website, and not just them. I get visits from 40 countries a month. So it's, I know that information is out there. The fact that when Senator Warner stood on the steps of the Capitol and used our term UAP and talked about aviation safety, that pretty much told me we crossed the Rubicon as far as, our concern. And then when the ODNI report came out and acknowledged our concern, to me, that was as supportive as I needed to be. I whether or not that directly had anything to do with this, I don't know, but I have suspicions.
Sure seems like it was a factor.
Yeah. Well, we did some stuff for we briefed congressmen back in the early 2000s, and awareness has been there. I've had cases referred to me from Europe through NASA, and then they end up on my desk. So somebody over there, we have weird friends in strange places. It was all underground forever. Yeah, it was all underground, for 20 years.
Rather, any last closing thoughts or questions from Mr. Roe?
I'm looking forward to the conference, and thanks for all you've done. This is fascinating.
And my pleasure. And if you guys find something I can talk to you about later, feel free to reach out. The presentations from last year's conference are on the NARCAP YouTube website. So if anybody wants to go look, Dr. Knuth did a bang up job presenting physics, and so did Peter Reale. And then I presented our 20 years of our findings at NARCAP, which cover 100 years of UAP data from pilots.
Well, I've got your website description or link in the description below. So go check out Ted Roe's website. Go check out that discussion. But maybe we can have you back post-conference just to get a recap from you on how it went and what were the most the highlights. Yeah, what the highlights were.
Sure.
Because I'm sure there's going to be many, and I can't wait to see who the final list is going to be. Can you give us a tease? Jeez, a little clue.
Well, there are people you've seen before.
Okay. All right. Okay.
But you've never seen them in this context. Okay. So.
Oh, okay. That's good. That's a good tease.
Once we get the confirmations out and everything, then we'll publish the list, and I'll let you guys know, and you'll be satisfactorily surprised. And also right now we're working on our digital presence. We don't have a web page up with AIAA yet, but we do have a Twitter account that's AIAA sanctioned, and it's at AIAA_UAP on Twitter, and that kind of defines our program and our members at this point. So.
Well, Ted Roe, go enjoy Hawaii, my friend. Get that shirt and pants off and go put on some sandals and shorts. Go hunt down a wild boar. I don't know what you're going to do tonight, but whatever it is, I know it's going to be way cooler than anything I do. That is for sure.
Yeah,
I'm going to do something awful to a pineapple. I'll do something awful to a pineapple.
All right, just stop there. I don't want to know anything else about what you're going to do to that pineapple. All right, and just be careful. They're very stickly.
That's right.
All right.
That's right.
All right, Ted.
Okay,
I'm going to be in contact with you, my friend. Have a wonderful night, and we'll talk to you soon.
Hey, my pleasure. Take care.
Yes,
Shaka.
Ciao.
Thanks, Ted.
Bye.
That was fun.
Yeah, you gotta love Ted.
Everybody loves his voice. Everybody is loving Ted's voice. That was awesome. Well, we got interesting.
It's a lot. It's a lot to say. I really think you should have a podcast, and in this world of a sea of podcasts, I think that says a lot. I will say though, people should definitely check out the website. There's a lot of really that case I was asking him about earlier in the interview. There's a lot more detail that you can go into. You can see the radar, you can see a photo. I think there was a video as well, but I couldn't find the video in that particular link. But there's a lot of good pilot cases, and I didn't get a chance to ask him, but it seems like the theme with these cases is more the spherical types of UFOs versus whereas I talk about triangles a lot and things like that. There are some things that are peculiar and seem unique about pilot sightings, and it almost makes you wonder, because pilots, are they identifying them just clearer because they're more up close, and so we get that's why the sightings are different. So yeah, there's a lot. I think there's a lot to unpack there that we didn't get a chance to. But yeah, people can go check out all the data themselves. It's all there.
All right. Well, let's get on to our discussion for hour 2, shall we? We've got Daniel Miller in the back. Let's bring him on. Daniel Miller, what's shaking, buddy?
Hey.
What's up, guys? Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, good to see your face.
Excellent.
You sound great. You look good.
Thank you. Good to see you guys. Good to be back.
Best looking man of ufology, if we're allowed to call it that anymore.
Right.
Thank you. I guess let's talk about. I mean, where should we start? Because So we had our interview with Lou Elizondo. We played our game with him. I thought it was a very cool 3 minutes, probably the best 3 minutes this show's ever had with him, because I think we got a lot of topics out really quickly, and we got just a quick, concise answer from him, which is it's hard to do. It's hard to do with him sometimes, just because
it was a lightning round.
It was a lightning round. Yeah, never seen a lightning round with Lou, so figured let's do it. Okay, I guess where do we start with this? Because there's a lot to go over. But I guess the weekend's news was this idea of, and I was guilty of this because, it's Twitter, and of course context gets lost and people get emotional and say things on Twitter. So I said a thing, and I upset some people, and I guess I have to clarify. So this idea of destroying ufology. What does that mean? What is it? How is it important? I mean, rather, I just saw you kind of just put up your hands like, does this even matter? What is ufology?
It's hypocritical of someone like Lou to say I want to destroy ufology, because he's part of ufology and he's built it up to a great deal. So yeah, I don't think it really means anything.
I mean, to me, I think the problem is that word, I think, means a lot of different things to a lot of people. So I feel like most of these arguments I'm seeing are kind of a semantic nature, where one person's arguing about the idea of ufology being destroyed, but ufology means one thing to one person, and then the other person means something different. And so even though I think most people may be in agreement with the concept, I think Elizondo was going for, there was a lot of, I think, controversy, because in my opinion, at least, this is my opinion.
What do we really think that he was going for by that? Because I think it's kind of personal, because let's say that you are somebody who's called yourself a ufologist or are into ufology, whatever. If he said, let's destroy or let's kill or let's put an end to that name, specific name, or anybody in the field, it would be considered a really bullying, like mean thing to say. And so I think when you say just a general term like ufology that means different things to different people, and you're not specific with your words, you do you leave it open to lots of fair interpretation. Because it could ufology or ufologist is that includes a lot of different people of different opinions and different credibility tiers and different books and things that have contributed probably to a lot of maybe even Lou Elizondo's opinions about things, for all we know. Yeah, I don't know. I didn't like it. I didn't like the verb. The
verbiage. No, that makes sense. I get it. I mean, I have no skin in this game. I've heard a lot of Lou Elizondo interviews, so I'm not speaking for him. All I know is when I heard it, I and this is just me, right? I just like a saying semantic, like my take on this is going to be probably completely different than the three of you. I think that's the issue at heart, probably, is that he meant not necessarily. I don't think it was a personal attack on the work you do, Jane, necessarily. And just that with now the direction this topic is going in terms of academia getting involved, scientists getting involved, what Ted Roe, just, amazing, love Ted Roe. What AIAA and all the other conferences are now getting involved in is that the topic is no longer just becoming, I'm hoping, fingers crossed, that the low information zone of this era is, or at least the lowest information zone of this era is coming to an end, to where more data collection, more the ability to collect data, the ability for academia, mainstream science to get involved is going to change what this topic means to people. When people hear the word ufology, I think a lot of people think ancient aliens. They think of Heaven's Gate. They think of these the fringe, the people who the reason why so many other people who may otherwise be interested avoid this topic. So when I heard it, that's what I heard. I heard just the destruction of that part of it. But like I said, it's just what I heard. Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, I don't take it personally. People know, like, I have a really detached from Lou Elizondo. I think somewhat to a point where I feel like I'm in hot water a lot because I don't connect with some comments that I see that are really invested in him. So for me, it has nothing to do with me. I'm actually thinking of friends and people that have influenced me or people I've known. It's really, I'm thinking of the community who is, for the most part, it's the UFO Twitter and ufology community that knows who Lou Elizondo is. Still to this day, I try to remind my family and friends who Lou Elizondo is, and they don't know. And I've told them multiple times, and they're like, "Wait, who?" Like, they don't know. Okay, they do know the ancient aliens guy right now, more likely. So I think, to me, it's not. I don't take it personally at all, but I just think, okay, he has a presence, on UFO Twitter. He influences this, he can have a power to unite or divide. And so I think anytime you're implying that any part of the community is like low information, it's like these broad strokes. I don't know how it can't lead to some kind of infighting or how you can't predict that it will.
And it's super hypocritical, right? Because how many times has Lou said something vague enough that it really could be perceived many ways? So he's adding to the mythology and the lore of ufology, right? So I mean, there's definitely a hypocriticalness about it. So yeah, totally.
Well, I feel like, okay, so if I was trying to kill quote unquote ufology, right, like he said, or destroy it, I mean, I gave him these softball topics. I feel like you could easily stop adding to the, what's the word I'm looking for? I guess the stigma or the speculation aspect of it. I mean, like, first one out of the gate, Roswell. He says, stick with it. Like, if you wanted to kill ufology, if you wanted to kill ufology, you would just been like, let's move on. Not bullshit, not call it bullshit, but let's just move on from Roswell. Like, that's the answer I was expecting from him on that. And we didn't get that. Cattle mutilation. Go ahead. No.
You're making a good point here. No, I was going somewhere else. So finish the point.
When we go to cattle mutilations, he's like, let's move on for now.
Yeah.
Which is like, okay, so we leaving. Why are we leaving cattle? I feel like we could take, for me anyway, I'd take that one right off the board. Again, if you're trying to kill ufology, that one should be let's move on, or maybe even bullshit, depending on what you're looking at, right? Alien abductions. I believe he said let's move on, right? For alien abductions.
Yeah, I think so.
He didn't call bullshit on it, and he just said there wasn't enough proof for it. UAP amnesty period. Easy, right? Yes, of course. Stick with it. Underground military alien bases. Bullshit. Thank you, God, that he answered bullshit on that. Grassroots UAP efforts like the Big Phone Home. Stick with it. Awesome. Seems pretty like a simple one to stick with, right? False flag. And this is the one where I was just like, ooh, man, I feel like this was the biggest softball to belt out of the park out of all of them. And that was the false flag operations. And what I meant by that was Stephen Greer's false flag operation narrative. Like that idea that the government is using this UAP story to attack its own citizens and then blame aliens when it's really us. I thought for sure that would have been bullshit, but it was a pass. Like he couldn't even answer it. He kind of stumbled around it a lot. And I was like, wait, when did, and then it got me to thinking, well, when did UAP false flag narratives been launched on the American people? Can anybody think of one?
I mean, I
Are
think
we talking
that's
about Roswell? Are we
I mean, all I can
talking
think of
about
is
Project Blue Book? Are we
Project
talking
Oxcart.
about,
You know, like when the SR-71 was being seen, and they're like, "Oh, it's a UFO." That's the only thing I could think of. But
yeah, I mean, but is that a false
The
flag
Lusitania?
narrative?
right.
Yeah, doesn't that
You
start
know?
as isn't false flag? I mean, don't you kind of learn that? You learn that in journalism. It wasn't the Lusitania. Like, doesn't it go like way back? Like, isn't that the right the ship
but
that
this is
was
saying that we're gonna
yeah.
pretend that we're attacked by UFOs, right? And say that these UFOs are
Right.
attacking us as a false flag, which
Right. I don't think it's ever happened. So I'm like, now I've got so many questions just about that one.
Right.
So alien hybrids. Let's move on. Thank God, right? I mean, I was hoping. I mean, but when he makes the point of like, hey, we share different genetic codes with a banana, you know, different proteins, different all sorts of things. So I mean, technically speaking, we could be a hybrid of the stars, which means that yes, we could be a hybrid of any other extraterrestrial intelligence out there that maybe we've never even contacted with. You know, chances are we probably have some things in common. Carbon, oxygen, maybe, you know, whatever. Go for it.
well, yeah, I mean, Lou could have killed those aspects of ufology right there. And I think that is really telling when, you know, during his and Cahill's 40-minute condescending to the ufology crowd, Cahill explicitly gives George Knapp a pass. Apparently, he's not part of ufology. And Lou Elizondo's going on Linda Moulton Howe's show on Wednesday. So if you're really against ufology, why are you supporting those two characters who I think are the biggest people in ufology?
That's fair. That's fair. Jane, any thoughts?
I
know Rather. You're fired up. Rather is fired up.
I was looking into
I'm very disappointed.
Yeah.
I'm holding back a lot of my fire. I am. But I was just looking at the history of the false flag. Just history goes back to the 16th century. So just in general, I know that yes, he's. I mean, we don't officially UFOs weren't even real until 2017. So yeah, we could look back through all of history, right? Through like this new lens potentially. And so that I think that's what I was just kind of getting at. It's like he comes from counterintelligence. He knows all the layers, and so that could be where he's coming from. I don't know if he's pointing necessarily to Roswell being a false flag, but you guys know my theories about that.
Now we're all trying to figure it out, and this is the problem. We're all trying to like read into his words.
Right.
Yeah. I'm like looking at Wikipedia, like false flag word 50. I'm like, what does he mean by that? Yeah.
Gerald said something interesting, and I kind of want to hear Rather ranted for a minute here. I want to give him the floor and tell us why, because I've never seen Rather as fiery. He's never been as fiery in our WhatsApp chat as he was this morning. Like he got a full weekend to digest what was said and what was going down on Twitter. And I feel like maybe you and I differ on this, Rather. And I think this is awesome because I think we can show people how to debate, how to have a conversation and be okay with disagreeing, but still not hate each other's guts at the end of the conversation. And so, but this is an interesting comment. Let's move on equals it's BS, but I'll upset too many people if I say that. I mean, do you think, you know, but again, like if you're trying to kill ufology, you shouldn't give a shit about that.
Exactly. And, you know, I do want to say, you know, I do, you know, really appreciate what Lou Elizondo has done for the community. Like we wouldn't have the ODNI report, UATPF, or the AOI MSG, or the Gillibrand Amendment if it wasn't for him. And I'm very appreciative of that. And I think that he's doing a great job for that. But it's clear to me now that Lou Elizondo is deceiving and manipulating the community. I mean, 100%. He admitted to that on our interview Friday by using sock puppet accounts to manipulate and deceive us, which, I mean, so how can you trust someone who is going to go and create a secret account, not only just create a secret account and post on it, but he creates these in groups and out groups of people who are in on the secret. And then he, you know, shares this special knowledge with them and really gets them to go out and attack his critics. You know, we can't see what the tweets that he posted under these sock puppets anymore because they've been deleted. But, you know, he made it seem like on the interview that he was just responding to people who are doing personal attacks on his family. That's a load of BS. You know, there wasn't really any attacks on his family before this whole Who's Lou documentary started. And that was after he deleted his sock puppet account. He was using that account to attack people like Mick West and Stephen Greenstreet and, you know, rile people up and sow division. And to what end is really my question now. You know, why he says that his audience isn't UFO Twitter. If his audience isn't UFO Twitter, why does he have multiple sock puppet accounts engaging with UFO Twitter and doing all of this nonsense? Like it just doesn't make any sense to me. I'm at a loss, really.
And well, his counterpoint to that was, well, your name's Rather Be Squidding. You know, like
sure.
your whole persona is a fake name. Who the hell
but
are you
I'm
to
not
tell? Look, I'm not saying this from my perspective, right? This is
actually, Lou Elizondo's point was, hey, Rather, what if your mother was a prostitute? That was actually
it was really aggressive, and I'm really glad I wasn't in that stream because I would have been like being like Mama Bear or something. Be like, boys, like you don't talk like that.
Well,
like I thought that was so
aggressive. He's a bully. He's a bully. If you look,
but I'm surprised more people did not pick up on that. And maybe that's just because I know Rather, and so I'm like protected. Maybe if I was just watching it, like maybe because you were so cool. You know what it was? It's because you were a cool cucumber about it, and you like just kind of answered the question, and you know. And I think I wouldn't have. I think kept my cool as much if he was talking to me like that. I thought it was a very bully thing to do. And I want to remind, this is Lou Elizondo's pinned tweet still today. Number one, I will tell you the truth. Number two, I will own my mistakes and hold myself accountable. Number three, everyone will be treated with respect, no matter their position. Number four, abuse or hatred towards others will not be tolerated. Number five, I will always push for full disclosure. So I just want to remind people of what he's promised on Twitter. And I do think it's okay to hold him to these things. And
full
so
disclosure
that,
would
I
be,
think that's,
tell us who your sock puppets are.
I mean, I don't know if I didn't research that alternate account to the degree that other people do. So I can't speak to that. All I can speak to is how he answered to it during the stream. And so I don't know the full extent of what he's tweeted to who, so I can't back Rather up on any of that. I can just know how he answered those questions. And to me, it was, he said two things. He said he used this Twitter account to collect intelligence because that's what he does. And that was the first thing he said.
Yeah.
So
number one, I guess he's telling the truth. And number two, then he went on to the of these accusations, that personal accusations people said to him that are, you know, horrible. We could all agree would be horrible. And just why shouldn't he be able to say something about it or defend him? I mean, I don't know why on a public account he couldn't block that person or respond to it in that place and have plenty of support and or report something if he's getting actually like doxing or threats. Those two things, just on his pure response, not knowing really anything really about the Twitter account, just how he responded to it was revealing and disappointing to me.
Well, I just want to be also clear though, and I think this is what Steve Shaw is saying, is that's Lou's point, is that imagine if somebody called your mom a hooker, and that's what it elicits hold on a second, it elicits this response, right? This natural response. Wait, who the fuck are you talking to? Is my mother a hooker? He's not calling your mother a hooker. He's saying, if somebody called your mother a hooker, how would you respond? And I think anybody would be like, respond one of two ways. Either they've got some choice words.
Who would respond by creating a sock puppet to go anonymously attack that person? That makes no sense.
Before we move on, I just want to say something. I was saying that before.
Yeah.
Oh, is now a good time?
Yeah, go on.
I think it's really important to remember that one doesn't know how one would act until it happens to you. And it's easy to pretend like we would know what we would do, but you have to remember, you never do. I have a story of a friend who was with his wife and they were walking down the street and a guy came up to him and pull out a gun. And his first reaction immediately was to laugh. And he tells the story because he's like, I never would have, in the wildest dreams, thought that would be my first reaction. And I bring that up to say that when Elizondo mentioned the Mother Hooker example, I thought that was too, he was making a point, but he also, I think, was being a bit feisty and a jerk. But
it can be both.
It can be both. I think it is both.
Yeah.
But also, the shit I see on Twitter at him daily, I honestly can't fault him for making an alt and pushing back a little bit, because it's pretty wild to have these people say these awful things about you. And it's one thing to be like, yeah, I would just block them, I'd move on, I wouldn't respond.
What awful things are you talking about? Are you talking about people accusing him of being, counterintelligence and stuff like that, or not?
No, man, like people. Director? Well, no, that I think is a valid thing to talk about. People are attacking his character, calling him a liar, calling him
a liar. Sure,
dude.
He's very deceitful.
I could do a Twitter search and find some stuff real fast.
I don't think there's anybody in the ufology field who has not been called a liar. So I mean, the liar.
Let me finish. I'm not. No, wait.
And maybe there's one person who attacked his family. People aren't attacking his family.
No. Listen. My point's not. You guys missing my point. So way worse than a liar. I've seen terrible people cursing him out. People saying awful things, and I can do a quick.
We've got whole channels. We've got whole channels dedicated to eviscerating.
I'm pretty ignorant of that. I really am ignorant of that, Daniel.
Eviscerating him and calling him a liar is very different than someone calling his mother a whore or disparaging his family. No one's doing that, and that's not what his stock bucket account was responding to.
Well, this is my point, though.
Completely disingenuous argument.
No, I don't think it is, because he feels attacked. I'm not justifying his behavior. I'm just saying that.
Poor Lou, who's been on the ISIS attack kill list.
Let me finish.
I don't know what attacks he's seen, Daniel. Like, I believe you that you've seen that stuff. I don't see. I really am ignorant on my Twitter feed. Like, it only I stay on a lot of local sightings. Like, I tend to. I don't know any of these these corner stories, or I haven't seen. So I don't doubt that you've seen that, Daniel, or that he hasn't gotten some really I imagine he's gotten he's probably gotten death threats and things like that, somebody in his position, and the amount of interviews and the amount of people. So I want to make sure that I don't minimize any of that, and I don't think any of us would want that coming our way. The karma of that I have gotten. Before the UFO world, I did movie reviews when I was a much younger female. You would not believe how what people are okay, especially back then.
Absolutely.
So sure. I do believe it, Daniel, and I'm sure people said those things to Lou that he then said to you.
My point I've been trying to say is
right,
just that I'm not even trying to justify the behavior. I'm just saying, I think it's easy for us to judge when it's not happening to us. That's all I'm trying to say. Is that it's one thing to be like, that's messed up,
Jane, right?
What?
It happens to us. He's not.
It happens. It's probably not to the degree.
Probably not to the degree and volume. I mean, he's
not to the
a lot better known than we are, and any crazy person with a keyboard can send him a crazy freaking message. So. It's day in and day out, I'm sure.
Watch out, rather.
Exactly.
Saying, watch out, rather, because we.
I know. I'm going to get a lot. I'm going to get a lot of this shit today.
No.
Well,
that shouldn't be
okay. Goddamn Warriors.
No. You're going to get it. I'm
going to get it too.
But here's the thing: here's the thing. There's warriors on both sides. There's warriors on both sides of this conversation, and they're both just as extreme, and they're both just as ridiculous, and they're both just as nasty. The
one side is leaded by fucking Lou Elizondo.
No,
he's encouraging all that.
I get what you're saying, and I had a conversation today with somebody who actually has the pictures of a lot of tweets from that faceless bureaucrat account, and we're gonna get them. I'm gonna try and get them from him, see if he'll send them to me. But you're 100% right. He was, and I love Lou. Okay, But I think Daniel's right to a point too. You don't know how people are going to react from it. Humans are going to be humans are going to human, no matter what their former job was, no matter what they did for a living. Humans are going to human. Sometimes that means that yes, they're going to be as petty as opening up a couple of sock puppet accounts and talking back at people who are even slightly throwing shade at the story. Is it right? I don't think so. Is it something
do you really
I would
think that's his motivations? I think it's clear that his motivations were.
What I was gonna say is you're right in that the attacks that were coming at him through that he was defending through that account were not aimed at his family. Were not, calling his mother a hooker. Were not accusing him of cheating on his wife, things like that. They were legitimate questions, and sometimes legitimate questions with a smart aleck, bullshit tone. Like, we're going to curse a lot on this show. I mean, sorry, like we're going to do it because there's a lot of emotion running high here today. And just for the record, the reason why I don't curse on the show is not because I'm trying to get some A&E television program show. It's because my little nieces and nephew listen to the show. And if you're a parent and you're on the road and you want to listen to this on a podcast while your kids are screaming in the back, they're not going to hear the curse words coming from me or our show. So that's why we do it. Okay. It's not like this corporate thing, but I digress. Like, I think all of this can be right. But here's the issue is none of us know. All of us are speculating here. He gave us a very soft yes. A faceless bureaucrat was him.
Oh,
but
he
didn't give us a definitive yes. Right. So we could go back. Look, it's him. Again.
But isn't that to his Twitter profile his promise to take accountability though? But like to
full
his
disclosure
tweet, right? I will own my mistakes and hold myself accountable. And when you say soft yes to something you did, but is saying soft yes admitting?
It's not lying. Oh, here's the thing, and we discussed this in the Discord after the show. If you didn't want this conversation or all this shit going on, he could have.
I will say that's kind of what my son does. That is kind of what my son does. That he's like, yeah, maybe I did it, and then I'm like, okay, yeah, I guess you did it, buddy, right?
My point is, he could have just straight up lied to us. He could have just been like, no, that wasn't me, and move on. No, I don't have sock puppet.
No, that's really true. If he was that is so important, Luis. That's so important, Luis. And I'm glad you said that. And I'm sorry to interrupt, but I know I'm coming really strong on the anti-Elizondo thing. But I want to say that's huge. That's huge that he could even admit that he would even justify, feeling angry at these people when we are talking about wanting disclosure and these counterintelligence person coming forward. If he's not lying, if he really avoids lying and instead is like, I can't answer, if that has been his consistent track record to date, he really has done a service to all of us in understanding what this phenomenon is about. I hold true to everything I said earlier, but I do think that's an important point. He could easily have said, yes,
I think that's giving you too much credit. I think that if he denied it, I think people have proof that it's him, and they would have had proof that he was explicitly lying then.
I don't know if there's any hard proof. I mean, what hard proof do you think there is?
I know that there's a lot of people who seem to know that it was Lou Elizondo.
I followed his account quite closely, actually. It was an open secret. He did not hide it.
No.
And near the end, he would literally respond like with a winky face. I mean, I don't think it's a secret.
All I'm saying is, if this went to a court of law, could we prove it based off what we have in front of us right now?
If we subpoena Twitter,
possibly.
And we could.
Possibly. It was that obvious near the end.
I mean, okay, if we had subpoena powers, who knows? Maybe, right? But yeah, I mean, again, like I think if you're the kind of guy who has sock puppet accounts, and the first guy that comes to mind for whatever reason is the basketball player, what's his name from the Orlando, Dwight Howard, or even Kevin Durant, who would have these like you're a freak of nature. You're the best basketball player on the planet, and you created a sock puppet account to talk smack back at a 13-year-old. Like, are you serious? And it took a while, but he denied it the whole time until it was just so obviously true. But I think the first human reaction to having sock puppet accounts would be embarrassment, followed by, oh shit, they caught me. And I think he might have been able to get away with that lie if he wanted to. Or maybe you're right. Maybe he just knew that if I lie here, I think there's stuff that'll lead back to this particular lie. I don't know. And none of us definitively 100% know on this. I think it's stronger than speculation. I think it's pretty well known. Like, I think all of us here are pretty much agreed that it's definitely was his account. But again, I don't have 100% proof of that. But yeah, I mean, I think for me, not saying a straight up lie is, I mean, look, dude, he said the first thing out of his mouth was, I collect intelligence.
Yeah,
straight up. I mean, that's a pretty direct, truthful answer, man. Like, well, how much more truth do you want than that?
Well, he's denied that he's, employing PSYOP tactics on the community before, but he clearly is. And my question is, how old is Elizondo? Like, how do you really think that he on his own is making these sock puppet accounts? Like, how much time is he spending on UFO Twitter? It's ridiculous if that's really the case.
That's the red flag, because I talked about that in the stream before this happened. If you guys recall, there was another UFO Twitter thing that was commented on. And again, not something I know any details about, will not comment on because I don't know anything about it. But I was just surprised that he knew all this information about it, and that there was all this time that he was able to dedicate it to understand. Because I literally do not have the amount of time in the day, and I don't mean that as even in a disrespectful way, or like I don't even care about the drama. It's like I literally can't keep up with it. And so I don't know how somebody in that position with such an important mission, with so many eyes on him, could have all that time. That was already very suspicious. I think is the timing of this stream and this new drama and how he reacted to it after I was already like pondering that. That part is suspicious, and it does make you wonder what the real mission is here. Is it to, yes, collect intelligence on the UFO Twitter community, influence them in a direction that is auspicious for whatever secret and public goals? There can be two. It can be both. It can be everything. And this recent weeks of chatter has just I will say, up until these recent weeks of drama, I've been pretty on the fence about Lou Elizondo. I think pretty coolly skeptical about him, avoided a lot of interviews, but just the way some of these recent things have been handled, I shifted in a really different direction. And I would compare it to another ufologist recently, who spoke on a stream, and that affected my perception very, very significantly of that person. But what I'll also say related to that person, I did a pretty positive Instagram post about them, and I believe we are not the sum of just moments that we have. Like, we are the sum of many parts and many actions, and everybody has, we have to see the best in everybody. And I think there's a lot of amazing things you can say about Lou Elizondo, and there's still time. There's still time. Well, be accountable. Yeah.
I think your last point is right on the button there. There's time. All of us have to fucking step back and be like, okay, let's just wait, because there's not enough data either way. And right now, I think Rather has a good argument to be upset about people muddying the waters, the potential of that. And it's not even a potential. It happened. I mean, that's, and why are we doing that within the community? Why are we? Because if we go back and we reread these tweets, which we're going to do because they're there, they've been recorded. And it is a majority. I'm not even put a percentage on it, but let's just say a majority of these things are sowing division, are clearly, putting up problems where it's like, I always, anytime my girlfriend starts, we have a very funny relationship, but I'm like, are you starting shit? Why are you starting shit where there's no shit? Like, why, like there ain't no shit here. Why are you starting some shit? And I think that's what that sock puppet account was primarily used for. And I think you have a right to be upset about that. And maybe there is a good reason. Maybe there is. I can't think of many right now other than just humans are going to human. Sometimes people, and like imagine telling a story thinking that you were going to be welcomed with open arms. And it turns out more than half of them don't believe you because you're a government spook in their eyes. And so, you create these sock puppets account and hope that you can start winning some people over. Maybe it worked. But maybe the blowback to that was, creating this unnecessary army of really gross people that defend this to a point where it's like, damn, dude, are you trying to find my family and where I live right now? Kind of stuff. But man, the people, Goofon was in here a little while ago. That guy's his whole channel is to just challenging Lou Elizondo to a fight. Like, what are we talking about here? For charity? Who's going to fight you for who's going to do that? Or Steve Cambion, and here's the part that frustrates me about both of these guys is every once in a while, they actually have something kind of cool to say that has got some good data attached to it, but I'll never hear it or listen to it unless it's brought up in a Kurt Jai Mungle episode, because you're yelling at people all the time and cursing at the top of your lungs and calling people liars or bitches or fakes or, just using explicit language that you would never want thrown at you if you were trying to start a conversation. And if they're not responding to you, there's probably a good reason why, So this is, both sides are guilty of this vitriol. Both sides are just as nasty. But I agree. I think you and I especially are probably going to get a lot of shit for this once this episode's over. I know I got a lot of shit this weekend. I was defending Lou this weekend. That's the whole thing is like, I still, even after all of this, the things that I hang my hat on, and I don't want to call it I believe Lou, but if I was going to lean toward the side of the fence that I'm very much on right now, it's like I tend to believe that his intentions are just and true only because of his insistency, the letters that he's written, the lawsuits that he's bringing to the table. Again, the money that he's getting allocated through lawmakers. Like, if you don't think, if this lie blows up in his face, like a lot of people think it's gonna happen, dude, the repercussions of that, let's forget about legally, just professionally speaking, he will never, ever, ever find a job with a pension that he's got now. He'll lose his health insurance. He'll probably lose his lawnmower and all this, the land that he's got over there in Wyoming, is it? It's not Wyoming. Where is it? Is it Wyoming?
Yeah, Wyoming. But it seems like this is probably an orchestrated psyop by the government with Lou Elizondo at the helm.
What's the purpose of it, though?
Who knows? Exactly. That's the question.
I mean,
maybe the purpose is good. Maybe the purpose is disclosure and getting this information out there. But it's still a psyop, and I feel manipulated.
But where's the evidence for that either, right? I mean, a psyop has a certain connotation that it's like this grand conspiracy with an ending in mind.
Well, he says he's an intel agent. That's what he does. That's what he's doing to the community.
I don't think counterintelligence agents don't do that. They're trying to figure out what our adversarial nations know about. They try to figure out what adversarial nations know that.
Regardless of that, I don't think a couple of sock puppet accounts equates to a psyop.
Well, yeah, that's what I was trying to figure out. Is like, I feel like, how does a sock puppet relate to all that other stuff we just talked about? It sounds like he just got mad and did stuff on the internet he probably shouldn't have. But what does that relate to? I guess the efforts he's doing.
The very first thing he said was that the reason for the account was because he collects intelligence.
Yeah, but that
it was based on his intelligence. But it's based on his answer. It's not based on like this weird flowchart logic conspiracy theory. I mean, that was how he chose to answer that question. So I just want to remind that's where it's coming from.
No, I understand that,
exactly.
But collecting intelligence does not equal PSYOP. It doesn't. It doesn't. Like a PSYOP on the level of what we do in other countries.
On the UFO Twitter community.
Look, because people throw around words all the time. What's the definition of a PSYOP? Like, to me, a PSYOP is the coup that the CIA did in Iran to overthrow the Shah and install their own leadership so they could take advantage of the country's resources and get a global foothold on that part of the world. I mean, to me, that's a PSYOP.
He's trying to deceive and manipulate the community is what he's trying to do. And I feel like that can be a PSYOP.
What you keep saying, what deception is happening? That's what I'm trying to figure out, I guess.
Well,
or manipulation.
Multiple sock puppet accounts. Why would you create a sock puppet account if you weren't trying to deceive and manipulate people? And he's clearly trying to manipulate people because he tells his supporters, hey, this is my real account. Follow what I say, do as I do. And it's a clear manipulation.
I'm sorry. Say one more time. My brain couldn't. Sorry, I think my brain rebooted. Say that answer one more time.
So he's creating these sock puppet accounts, and he's telling his supporters, people he's close to, "Hey, this is my sock puppet account." So he's manipulating. That? Yes, I think we do. I mean, I explicitly don't know it, but his supporters are very close to that account, and that's, I think, where these rumors came from. And he's clearly manipulating his supporters by saying, hey, this is my secret account. Don't, on the DL, here's, what you should be doing. Here's the people you should be targeting. And maybe if he's not explicitly saying that, it's definitely implicit by who he's going after under those sock puppet accounts.
I see what you're saying. So you're saying by that account attacking these people, it then gives like a green light for the people who are really these.
Yes.
Got it. So that's the manipulation. I got you. What do you mean deception? Just in the sense that he's doing something without being honest with who he is?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, I see.
So Lou Elizondo, one of his original job titles, it's harder to find these days, and I do remember getting a check from Jeremy Corbell at the time that this was an accurate job description. So he was a foreign disclosure officer, which works with the U.S. and foreign governments to securely release information about policies and procedures that could affect these entities. So, I mean, that's within, the intelligence community, releasing information that can affect the intelligence community. That's essentially what he's done. So I don't think you have to invoke any kind of scary psyop. I mean, that I believed that from the beginning, that this was part of a much bigger machine, that had a lot of, that had people behind it and plans behind it. That Lou Elizondo was made to be involved with. I mean, I think I've said so much that's my take on this. But here's where I'm a little probably different than Rather, and though these recent weeks give me pause for thought, is I haven't seen the deception, right? So like things like you're saying, Luis, keep looking into Roswell, don't forget I hadn't seen any deception. I'd seen somebody who truly believes that the UFO phenomenon is real. And just because you work for the government and you have top secret briefings and you're being tasked to share information with the public, it doesn't mean that you're being deceptive inherently, right? Or a bad person, or you have bad intentions. It could be quite the opposite, that you're like, oh my gosh, this is so important. This is almost sacred, and I take this very seriously, that I'm sharing government leaked information, right?
Well, let me ask it to you like this, Rather, or anybody here. What if the intelligence that was being gathered was to push the community to help them? In other words, if they know, okay, we're going to need people calling congressmen and senators. We're going to need people to get upset. We're going to need people to motivate themselves and organize. And their information led to, if we just push this button, and this button, I think we might get a grassroots movement, or whatever. Let's say that was the hope.
I'd say they're incompetent because they did the exact opposite. They're instead of these divisions, these fights we're having on UFO Twitter are so dumb. Like we shouldn't be having them. And
Agreed.
You know, there's multiple people have accused me of having my own sock puppet accounts, which I felt laughable at the time, and it still is laughable. But clearly, those people were thinking, "Oh, hey, Lou Elizondo has a bunch of sock puppet accounts. Clearly, everyone does. I should probably have a couple sock puppet accounts." And it is a stoking division when we should be united. And I think that's counter to the potential goals that you just stated.
But I mean, we did organize a grassroots effort, right?
We probably would have had more supporters if there wasn't, half of UFO Twitter hating us, right? I
mean, maybe.
The thing is, to me, it's just like neither here nor there. Like, really, like it. Look, he says he was counterintelligence. He was in that before this. He can't talk about everything. I mean, I think some things are kind of self-evident. We just kind of try to talk ourselves out of it a little bit. But I mean, I said the same thing about Jeremy Corbell, who is somebody who I've spent time with in person. I've only have good things to say about. I've seen him support the UFO community behind the scenes. People haven't seen that. And so, but at the same time, I'm not stupid. Like, I know that, he has a mission. I know that he has a game plan. I know that he has sources and information that I don't have. And I always kept that in mind in every interaction with him. And I keep that in mind with everybody I interview, especially if they have any kind of government history or title. And that is should be a basic instinct, about interacting with human beings, especially in this national security field with such a dark legacy of cover up. And so I think to just keep having this conversation is like, is this plan, how grassroots is this or not? Like, I think that I'm tired of that. Who cares? Like, what is the outcome? Are we going to get the hearings? Are we going to get the data? Talking to Ted Roe about the sphere data. If Lou Elizondo has a new video to share, I'm all about it. But I'm not here for Lou Elizondo Twitter. I'm not here. And really, he says, no, don't talk about cattle mutilations. Well, if I want to talk about cattle mutilations, I'm going to talk about cattle mutilations. Good news for him is I don't want to talk to them because they freak me out. That's why they freak me out. I like animals. I'm not a vegetarian. I'm no saint or anything like that. But so, yeah, I want to stop. I'm so over, what are people's motives and why are they doing what they're doing and can they be trusted or not? Let's just say none of them can be trusted. And let's just look at the data, photos, videos,
I think you summed it up pretty nicely there, Jane. And that's the thing really that we need to concentrate on is all of this is bullshit. Mm-hmm. Like all of this doesn't matter if there are laws being written and passed and we're going to start getting reports and senators and congressmen are talking about this. And just going back to what Ted Roe said, like the part of the conference that's talking about UAP has nothing to do with drones. That's not what they're talking about. That's a whole separate discussion than from the diamond in the rough aspect. And I don't know. I'm interested to see how all of these strings were pulled and exactly what happened between 2017 and 2030 and when we're all kumbaya holding hands and loving each other because we all got UAP disclosure in 2030. We can then all look back and go, oh, okay.
Yeah, I see now.
That's why he had the sock puppet accounts, or that's why they were cloudy about this, or they didn't answer this, or because then we'll be able to have perspective. Right now and we have a right to do this because we're Americans, we're human beings. We have a right to sort of try and come to conclusions before we have all the data. And if some of that data I think you're right, man. Like some of this data rubs people the right way. Some of this data rubs people the wrong way. and I wish it was more on the same page. I wish just whatever the data was that was coming out was more consistent so people could get on board. But the things I get excited about: public hearings, quarterly reports, the new NDAA, the AIAA having an aeronautical conference on UAPs, and I can't wait to see who's going to talk at that. And then we've got not even to mention the private sector with Avi Loeb, and this conversation is happening on those levels. And if you want to partake in those levels, awesome, great. Welcome to the conversation. If you want to take your conversation to a different part of this phenomenon, then great, awesome. Go have that conversation over there. But I think Ted's right. You got to read the room, and if we want the entire world to take this as seriously as all of us do, it's going to have to come from PhDs. It's going to have to come from government. It's going to have to come from elected leadership. I'm sorry. That's just society. As much as that sucks, it's not going to come from a book. It's not going to come from one video or a leak. It's going to come from a verified place, a place that can be measured, weighed, and executed and or repeated. And that's just where it's going to come from.
Ted Roe literally said it started because of the ODNI report.
Right. And yeah, I mean, just the fact that he didn't start telling his experience stories until Lou Elizondo came out. So even with all the negative stuff that Lou brings, he, I think, has inspired a lot of people to start talking, and he's inspired lawmakers to start looking at it. And I'm concentrating on the things
that I totally agree with that too,
that are positive. Mm-hmm. But even with all of that, there's an underbelly to this that doesn't hit people the right way, and it's for good reason. It's valid. What I'm saying to you rather is you have a valid reason to have those doubts, and so does anybody else.
That's disappointing because he could have been so positive, right? Like if he did, it's opportunity lost, I guess. And that's kind of, I had held up Lou to a high regard, kind of put him on a pedestal, and it kind of got tossed over after Friday. And I guess I'm still kind of dealing with that, and that's why I'm so aggressive and being so loud about this. But it's
right. Well, I think it's just managing our expectations. We cannot. We can no longer. And I think, Daniel, you hit this on the head. We can no longer put people on pedestals in this conversation. We have to see what data they're bringing, and then if the data requires the pedestal, then we put you up there.
No, don't put them up there. The data can go up there, right?
Yeah,
the data can go on the pedestal.
If the data presents itself in a Pulitzer Prize,
sure,
or a huge breakthrough in science,
but even if you get the Pulitzer Prize, I'm not going to put you up on a pedestal. There's not a single human being walking on this planet Earth that I put up on a pedestal except for my dear angel child, little boy, which is a mistake, right? That's going to get me into trouble in life. It's not a good thing.
Spoken like a true
it's
mother.
Not a good thing.
Yeah. I think Twitter could take that advice for sure.
I've done that in the past, I think, and been burned, and met too many people, and I just learned just to go into things with more open eyes. And also it's like, I don't know, maybe other people just have, and this is no disrespect to any family members or friends who are listening, but if you get to know anybody long enough, right, you're going to find some skeletons in their closet. You're going to find some flaws. You're going to find right. So it's like, there's nobody out there that doesn't have that in them. Lou Elizondo included. It doesn't mean he's an evil, PSYOP agent, who is intentionally ripping apart the community, but also like, oh no, maybe he is. And that's just kind of the game we play in this world of consuming podcasts and all this digital information nonstop. And we create these caricatures of people that are often not real. And data though is real. And so that's why if somebody can come across data and get that released, and you can still separate that human being, from the data they were able to bring to the table. Yeah.
And that's why we value people like John Greenwald, because he's bringing great data to the table, and
Great
there's
example.
either the data holds up or it doesn't, and there is no, like, I don't need to put John Greenwald on a pedestal. His work speaks for himself. And when he's wrong, he cops up to it, so yeah, I think there was I think the thing that started this is I posted something and I got a response from Michael Huntington, who's a very well-known researcher, and I bet, I mean, his accusation was that he lobbed at me was basically, you're just a part-time ufologist that calls yourself an activist and has never researched anything. And in my mind, I've got over 300 interviews worth of research. Well, I mean, we've got a whole body worth of research that we do live for you guys every day, not to mention all of the stuff that I watch, read, or consume when I'm not here with you guys. And then on top of that, to call us fake activists, like, I was just like, screw you. You're just pissed off because the last 45 years of your research has led to nothing. And now it's being hijacked by this New York Times Nimitz thing, and you're pissed off because you don't get to finish this race. The baton has been taken from you. And that was a little harsh of me, but the good thing is that Michael reached out. He's going to be coming on the show. We're going to discuss this. Like, I think that's the future of this discussion. And I love that he was able to just be like, look, clearly we're both emotional and we're both coming at this from different perspectives. But I think, no disrespect to the last 75 years of research, but I can't use that stuff for the desk of a senator. For me, it's not that it doesn't matter. It's valuable. We're standing on the shoulders of a lot of that research. We wouldn't be here having this discussion without it. But what is going to grab a senator's attention? I'm sorry, it's not 75 years of research. It's too dense. It's too complex. If we can't all agree on it, how the hell are a group of senators going to agree on 75 years worth of data? It's impossible. So might as well show them what they know now, what is happening today. And apparently, according to some pilots and some people who said things, there's occurrences all the time. And there's data being picked up all the time to a point now where we need an office to collect it and manage it and make sure that hits the right channels. But hey, the beautiful thing is that we're going to talk about it, right? We're going to discuss it. And I think I've stepped over the line. He stepped over the line, and we both came to really say, okay, we're just both being dicks. We're both emotional, but but part of me does get to that point where because unlike a lot of shows, I've met Lou in person. I've talked to his father. I've talked to his wife. I've talked to, his friends. And we've spoken to him on this show so many times. I've lost count at this point. It's got to be at least 5 or 6. And I, as a human, just want to trust him. I want to believe that what he's doing is just. And maybe that's foolish of me. And, when I was talking to a good friend of mine today, who I won't name, we were both like, if he's wrong on this, we're just going to have to eat crow and say, yeah, okay, we got it wrong. We got it wrong. We trusted somebody that maybe we shouldn't have trusted. But again, if I was in Vegas,
I don't follow that logic of if he was wrong about something, we got it wrong. Like, what do you mean? Like, if he was wrong about what? Like,
well,
which
in other words, putting our trust in him. Putting our trust in him. Putting our trust in him. You know what I mean? Like, just
yeah,
defending
I don't think
him.
that takes away from the tick. See, that's why I go back to the data. I don't think it takes away from the Pentagon UFO videos or Commander Fravors testimony. Like, I think that's why we really have to separate the people out from the evidence. And I get you, Luis, that you're also a good person, and I want to believe that you're a good person. And I haven't met you in person yet, but I wouldn't be on this podcast twice a week if I didn't really think that, like, really deep down. I think you're a good person, and I want to believe that. And I would be very disappointed if I found out you were like a secret Men in Black agent, right?
In a way, though, in a way, though, you're kind of carrying my water in that way. You're taking a risk, right? And so if I turn out to be if I turned out to be
100%.
some real piece of garbage,
Yep.
you would feel bad.
Yep.
And I think that's what this
Sure.
is, you know, like, and we would have to come to the table and tell our audience and tell the people who we said, you know, and maybe even sometimes with curtness and a little bit of disrespect because you're just frustrated, you know, and turn around and say, hey, look, I'm sorry. I got this wrong. And I should have paid more attention to the signs. And I should have maybe listened to you more, you know, but I guess my point is that I'm willing to do that. In this case, I'm willing to sort of put myself out there, risk my ego, you know, to trust somebody, to trust somebody, because I have defended Lou, because I want to believe Lou. Again, it goes beyond just these shows, you know. So maybe it's a blind spot, but I always try to play devil's advocate for him. But at the same time, I think there are things that he's doing that are unacceptable. Having sock puppet accounts to me it's unnecessary. It's so beneath you. You don't need to do that. And, you know, if that was my advice as his wife or his kids or his best friend or or just some jerk on the street, I would advise to anybody, you don't need a sock puppet account. Just ignore it, man. As much. And coming from me, that's a joke because sometimes it's hard for me to ignore it. Sometimes, again, humans are going to human. So yeah, I guess that's my take. But you know, the point is that all of us can have different opinions and not walk away hating each other after this. You know, we can have these tough conversations and we're going to engage you guys out there in these tough conversations. If you want to have the conversation on our show, and I extend that invite to anybody who wants to come on this show and debate their point of view, you're more than welcome to reach out to me. And if we can make it happen, we'll make it happen. That goes for anybody. Okay. You want to come debate your film, you want to come debate your channel or your position, we'll entertain it.
Maybe it's a segment. Maybe it's like UFO debates, and it's like
I mean, look, there's a lot of things we're going to be doing new on the show when we relaunch it in mid-April. But you know, Twitter is clearly not the way to do it. It's so obvious. So I invite anybody to come debate us. If you think we're so stupid, if you think we're not informed, then you should be able to burn us real easy. So come. The floor is yours, as I like to say. You guys, thank you so much for coming aboard and hanging out today. Miller, it was good to see your face.
Good to see you guys.
Yeah. What do you how's well, I'm not gonna ask you. That's all personal stuff. I was gonna say, how's your wife going? You know, how's
we'll talk to him. Busy these days right now. But we'll talk.
That's good. All right, you guys. Well, Daniel, where can people find Mr. Daniel Miller?
Yes. Well, I know we're talking about how terrible Twitter is, but you can find me on Twitter. On username is below at SICCOP1. And it's not the best place for nuance, but we do our best.
It's the worst.
But yeah, it's not ideal.
Jane, what do you got working this week? Anything?
Yeah, so Weird Hollywood this Thursday. So that's 6 Pacific, 9 Eastern, and we'll have Chrissy Newton as a guest, which is fun. So Jess Rogie and I were talking They Live.
Awesome.
So that'll be a fun one. Wait.
Yeah, that's gonna be going. Rather, what are you cooking this week? Are you making a video to prove your mother's not a hooker?
No, I was a little bit distracted this weekend with current events, but I hope to get a video out about UFOs and how people rationally might think about this stuff soon.
And by the way, you said this in Discord, but I just want to make sure you were serious. Your mom watched that episode.
She did, yeah. She's a big fan.
Yeah.
My gosh!
But
yeah, and she is not happy with Lou Elizondo that she was used as the proxy, you know, in an argument. Yeah. That's for sure. Well, I'm sorry, Mrs. Squidding. We truly apologize. I'm sure. I hope you see that was not his intention. And I don't think she was that
offended, but
I can understand. Hey, man, it's mom. Real quick before we get out of here, Matthew Riot, thank you for the $5 donation. He said a PSYOP would be like using Oswald to infiltrate the Fair Play for Cuba committee. That's fair.
I'm not sure I get that one, but
okay, so this is long, but basically Oswald was part of the Communist Party, and so using him to infiltrate a Cuban. I don't know which Cuban committee he's talking about, but yeah, but instead the government was like, get the hell out of here. I mean, Oswald went to Russia trying to be a communist, and they're like, no, you're a spy. They would not give him the time of day. He's like, no, I want to be a communist. And they eventually left, but that's why I had a Russian wife. Anyway, Event Time with a $5 donation. Great guest, speaking of Ted Roe. And then City Bedford says, with a $10 donation, thank you guys for the super chats, says, love this balanced, respectful conversation, refreshing. Well, thank you, Cindy. If you haven't already, I think it's the first time I've seen Cindy in the conversation. Please subscribe, Cindy. Show up some more. We'd love to have you in the future if you can be here. Thank you to everyone in the chat, all of our members, Sparky Lady. I didn't see Aaron Desario. I think he's traveling right now. He might be on the road. My girlfriend's in the house. Intense but productive. Thank you, Michelle. Jay Elegant Heineken, Rashu, all you guys, thank you so damn much for being here. Toby AM, ABCCBA. Thank you guys so damn much. But anyway, you guys, before we get out of here, I want to say thank you to DOS Tapes. They provide all the tunes. I want to say thank you to everyone again in the chat, super chats, Patreon members. If you're not a Patreon member, for as little as $1 a month, you can help support the show. We're a public access channel. We're supported by viewers like you, so $1 goes a long way. We're sending Rather to the conference, the SCU conference in Alabama. He's paying for his plane ticket, but we're going to pay for the ticket to get in.
That's awesome.
So if you could help support that, that'd be great. And yeah, if you can't, don't worry about it. Just like, subscribe, share. All of our content is free. There's no paywall here, so enjoy. Until next time, you guys, thank you so damn much for coming aboard, getting weird with us here on another episode of the Unidentified Celebrity Review, your home for credible news, reviews, and commentary on everything UAP and UFO. Until next time, you guys, love you all very much. We'll see you on Wednesday. Mick West is going to be here. We're going to talk about the gimbal rotation. I'm sure that'll piss a bunch of people off today.
A super low-key episode. Got it.
We're really going for
keep the intensity going.
Who can we bring in on Friday that would piss people off more?
Stephen Greer.
Stephen Greer would be perfect. But we did balance it out Friday. We've got retired F-16, F-18 fighter pilot Chris Lito, so he'll be here today, or on Friday, excuse me. So yeah, you guys, we got a great week coming up. I'll see y'all soon. Love you. Peace.
Around here been dropping like flies already, and where's that getting us, huh? Nowhere. Fast. You know what old Jack Burton always says at a time like this? Who? Jack Burton. Me.
I'm going to tell y'all right now, all of these wonderful people would not be here without Patreon supporters like you. If you enjoy credible news, reviews, and commentary on UFOs and UAPs 5 days a week, you want to support this show. What's your name? Marty. Marty, look how easy this is, Marty. Pick up your phone. Boom! You're a Patreon member. I mean, look, it's so easy. You just click the link, which is right here. Just for $1 a month, you can support this show. Just fill out the information and pledge what's comfortable for you. It could be $1, $5, $10, or who knows. Just support.